Just now I read the story of the wise men, so-called magi, who came to worship the newborn King of the Jews. The people who previously come to the baby Jesus were shepherds, and as we all know, both of them are essential parts of the Christmas story. Every school play has both shepherds and wise men. But they were very different groups of people. They didn't look the same. Presumably they didn't smell the same. The shepherds would have arrived on foot. The wise men probably had camels and servants waiting outside. And only the wise men brought serious money. So here's a question. Is there any common feature linking these two disparate groups? If so, what? Well, first answer, both of them came from groups that were excluded from Jewish society. Why were the shepherds excluded? It's the sheep. Sheep don't keep the Sabbath. So the shepherds end up not keeping the Sabbath either because they can't. And that puts them permanently on the naughty mat. Well, as for the wise men, well, they were foreigners, real outsiders, Gentiles to use the New Testament word. They didn't belong at all. Answer number 2. Both the shepherds and the wise men were there by invitation. And very clear invitations they were too. The shepherds saw an angel who told them, "It's the Messiah you've been waiting for, in the city of David." The angel didn't need to tell the shepherds that meant Bethlehem. "Oh," says the angel, "it's the baby lying in a manger, just so you can be sure you found the right one." The invitation to the wise men? Well, there was that star, wasn't there? Now, it's never been explained how 3 rather high-status characters from somewhere outside Israel could see an unusual star and work out that it was the birth of a new king in Israel. But God knew these people. He knew how they thought. And as for giving them travel directions, has it ever occurred to you that the star did the same job as the sat-nav? Only it was rather better because you didn't have to press buttons to tell it where to go. Well, today is Epiphany. It's the day celebrating God revealing Christ to the Gentiles, starting, of course, with those 3 wise men. Thinking about both the shepherds and the wise men together, we see God announcing, with invitations that were unmistakably deliberate, that the good news of his Son is for those who were excluded, whether by nationality or by circumstances. That's the thing to celebrate. But now I want to look at the story from another direction. What was Herod thinking? Now, there are things I might say about Herod which are better not said. They'd just be too rude. So I thought, what would this fictional character say about Herod? Mr. Spock from Star Trek is, of course, entirely fictional, but his reputation was clarity of thought on every occasion. What he might have said was, Herod's plan to deceive the wise men and murder the baby was entirely illogical. So why was Herod's behaviour and thinking not logical? Firstly, it was well understood and accepted by priests and people generally that a Messiah would eventually come. That was prophesied since the time of Isaiah. Those Old Testament prophecies show God working to a plan. And the Old Testament also shows that God's plans work. Remember the business of getting across the Red Sea with an army pursuing them? God made it happen. Well, maybe Herod thought he'd got an impostor in front of him. There were false claims to being the Messiah. But an impostor does not organise foreign dignitaries who can come along and point out an astronomical event that's visible to the human eye. With all of that in front of him, it was illogical for Herod to suppose that he could somehow force a change in God's plan. Herod was just grossly underestimating the power of God. But while it's easy to criticize Herod, I have to point the finger at myself. I find myself being illogical. If I've got an issue to deal with, what do? First, think about it. Second, worry about it. And only third, remember to pray about it. Which can mean that when I do get round to praying about it, I've already got my own idea of a solution in mind. Well, wouldn't it be more logical to bring the whole problem to God in the first place, because he might have a solution I hadn't thought of? Go back to Herod for the moment. What was he trying to achieve? I mean, murdering babies and trying to kill off the Messiah isn't going to do him any favours. Well, all I can think of is that he was just desperately trying to hang on to what he had got while it lasted, because he just couldn't see anything better. Contrast that with what God is offering. As we know, Jesus grew up to offer hope and salvation. What the shepherds and the wise men are pointing to is that what Jesus offers is open to anyone. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your situation is. The good news of Jesus is there for you. In any other year, that could be a good place for me to stop talking. But when I was recording this, what was on the news looked very gloomy indeed. And so I think it's right to bring one more character in. I don't have a picture. Well, this is Hezekiah, King of Israel, around 700 BC. Pictures are not readily available. But the Bible describes his situation, and it was gloomy. The king of Assyria and his armies were invading. They were overrunning anywhere they could reach. Jerusalem had already been surrounded once. They were expecting a return visit. King Sennacherib of Assyria sent Hezekiah a threatening letter. Very threatening. And Hezekiah did the logical thing. He took the letter to the temple, he spread it out before God, and prayed. The result is set out in 2 Kings, chapter 19, verse 35. You can look it up there to see what the score was. King Sennacherib lost big time.